familiar faces, and also, again, great, as Director Fishman mentioned, great that SMUD and the Tree Foundation have been able to maintain such a strong relationship over the last 30 years, and looking forward to doing even more. And I know Torin and Ray and I had some good conversations the last couple of weeks. We're excited about some things we can do forward. Well, I wanted to share with you something that I previewed at the Neighborwoods event and now is live, and something that you guys can all get access to. This is our Sustainable Communities Resource Priorities Map. For folks who are looking to try it on their own, if you go to smud.org/sustainable communities, scroll down, there's a click on the map, and it will take you to this page. And so what I want to do is just give you a real brief justification as to why we put this together, and then kind of walk you through how to use the map, and particularly identify some layers I think that will be of specific interest to folks on this call, talking about the link between trees and tree canopy and overall neighborhood sustainability, viability, health equity, and the like. Steve Harriman and I went through like an early draft of this. I'm really happy to show the full document. So what we have here is the homepage for where the map lives. And what we try to do is make it so it's very user-friendly for anybody to kind of walk through and learn through the methodology, and also learn how to use the tool. So I'm going to kind of walk you through it the way a new reader would take a look. You can see there's a map of Sacramento County, which is SMUD service area. The wards identified are the wards that are represented by our board of directors, of which Director Fishman is one. And then what we've done here on the left side, again, is explain kind of the justification statement behind the resources priorities map. And so how is SMUD using this? As you can see from looking at the map, there's kind of a heat layer, so to speak, of the areas of most sensitivity or the highest resource need being in the darkest red, some with some lesser resource needs as it defined by SMUD, and more the darker green. It doesn't mean that there can't be resource needs that exist. And that's the great part about the map, is you can go from layer to layer to identify kind of the specifics. But on the left here, identify the key criteria that we evaluated in defining those levels of sensitivity. And so if you click down here, you can see one of the layers that we leveraged, and I want to say leveraged instead of evaluated, was opportunity zones. Opportunity zones also incorporate a lot of other existing data, so we didn't use it to weight our evaluation, but because there are investment opportunities that are tied to the opportunity zones, we felt it was important to incorporate. And you can notice here, some of the opportunity zone areas don't overlay some of the more sensitive areas as exists. And that was kind of the impetus behind even us developing this consolidated map, because what we realized was there's a lot of resource issues because each evaluation tool was different, whether it was a vulnerable communities map, whether it was a low income map, whether it was a environmental justice map. We realized that they weren't necessarily talking to each other. We thought that this was an opportunity to put a lot of that information together. The next layer that we incorporated was information related to the Sacramento Promise Zone. Similarly to the Opportunity Zone, this is an area that incorporates a lot of existing data, but identifies some of the investment benefits of investing and providing a resource support in those areas. And those are, again, targeted and grouped based off of income, and again, I want to say over 127,000 residents, 34% living in poverty within this targeted zone. Next layer, we took the SB 535 disadvantaged communities data and incorporated that as well. And again, as you click on each layer, it can give you some specifics as to the census tract data, the population, the Calum-Biro screen score, so you can get a little bit more information about what triggered some of these SB 535 disadvantaged criteria and designations. The next layer, we did take a look at Sacramento poverty by zip codes. So in this case, we looked at zip codes where at least 25% of the population was living below the poverty line. Again, a larger cluster, but again, allowed us to really take a look at that component of sensitivity and resource need. We also incorporate medically underserved areas as a part of this. So again, this ties in infant mortality, access to healthcare facilities, and what have you. So again, and what's interesting about the way in which we design this is if you have some questions about the data sources, you can actually click within the layer to get exactly to the resource data that this was drawn from. So that way, again, you can fully understand how we got to our final determination. We also incorporated the Healthy Sacramento Coalition health equity data. And we also took a look at the social vulnerability, the climate change impacts in California. And what you'll notice here is that they did use, as opposed to the other data sources that identify specific locations, this did a similar kind of gradation, this in the virus screen data, where they leveled each census tract with a coloration based on the sensitivity. And then we did incorporate the Calum-Biro screen, environmental justice information as well. So we took all of this data together and identified, again, a general set of resources, our resource need evaluation, but then we also incorporated a lot of other layers on top of that as a part of the map evaluation to identify whether there were some correlations, some cause and effect correlations between some of these other key neighborhood viability and sustainability components and some of these baseline analysis components. And so we looked at EV access, we looked at tree canopy, we looked at food deserts, food access, transportation access, and what have you. And so what you'll see is when you get through the storyboard on the left, you can actually move forward into a more hands-on, neighborhood-focused set of evaluation. So here's the map in its own right, and just so folks can learn how to use it. Down here on the bottom, you can see the base map gallery. So right now we use a traditional base map, but you can pull from an imagery map, street maps, terrain maps, all of those to change the base. Again, I'll just, for the sake of just conversation, I'll just switch to an imagery map real quick. And you'll notice, again, as we zoom in, you'll have the opportunity to actually take a look at specific neighborhoods as you get closer and closer. For the sake of this quick demonstration, what I'll do is I'll go back to our modern antique map here. This is a little easier to see at times. And the next level here is our layers list. And our layers list allows us to go ahead and toggle on and off each of the different GIS layers based off the information that you'd like to have. But before I go into that piece and have some conversations, if you're just going through the map itself and you just zoom in on its own, some natural layers will automatically pop up. So we'll automatically incorporate our light rail lines and our major transit stations. And if you take one more click on the zoom, it will also automatically populate all the schools in the area. The schools are evaluated based off of the access to free and reduced lunch. Those schools with the highest free and reduced lunch populations are in red. Those are the least are in green. And again, when we start talking about correlations, oh, sorry, I'm going the wrong way here. You'll notice where most of those red schools are, you'll also see similar correlations to the overall sensitivity issues. And so one of the questions that we want to ask, and I will show this on a bigger scale, and I think I talked to Torin and Steve about this, is as we look, for example, at these areas in total and look at these concentrated red areas, they may not necessarily be a surprise to most folks who've been in Sacramento for a while, who know and understand the neighborhoods that they live in and they're surrounded by. But I think one of the things that really popped in my mind as we started to take a look at these layers is the tree canopy information. And as we overlay the tree canopy data that we have access to, as you can kind of see, particularly in the core areas, where the tree canopy is most dense, we're seeing green overall. We're seeing overall quality of life in a positive manner. In those areas where it's less dense, we're seeing, again, let's just go down into Fruit Ridge Manor as an example. You know, you start to see the tree canopy dissipate along Highway 99. Again, areas in South Sacramento that were mentioned in our previous conversation where this map can help guide not just areas where the gaps might exist, but also areas where the need definitely exists. And what we've been trying to do is leverage this as a tool that community members can use to better understand that correlation. Now, SMUD is an electric utility. Obviously, he's concerned about tree canopy, but also one of the things that we've been really concerned about is overall air quality, as tree canopy can help in that conversation. And one of the key pieces of data that we've also started to take a look at is access to electric vehicles, because one of the things we notice when you evaluate where existing electric vehicles are in our region, and right here is a list of where those charge stations exist within Sacramento County. You can see with your pretty with your blind eye there that those areas in red don't have access and don't have access to that infrastructure. So one of the things that we can leverage this map to do is that we start to improve and work on our integrated resource plan and take a look at where infrastructure needs to go. We can actually use an equity lens to do so. And so, for example, what we've done is actually started working with the city, and they were great enough. They and the Air District were able to identify their existing investment priority areas, which are here in purple. And then also, make sure I can see this correctly here, their proposed charges for super commuters, which are identified here in black and white. What we've been able to have that conversation with the city in a really productive way is where those gaps exist. And one of the things we've noticed is that it's not just a city of Sacramento conversation. And as we take our city's layer here, we start to identify a lot of these areas where those gaps exist are in that, you know, that area between the city and the county where a lot of times things get lost. And so this is a tool that we're trying to leverage as something that the community can use, that the Tree Foundation can use, and other organizations can use to better inform planning decisions, better inform activation opportunities. And again, it's open source. It's something that we can actually share with everyone. Again, the layers that exist here, everything from census tract to, again, food access, food desert. And again, we have staff that's dedicated to this. SMUD's making this commitment to monitor this and update this on an annual basis. And our real goal is ultimately to track the work that we're doing in the community and hopefully see the effect of the colors changing on this map on a regular basis. And again, we know we can't do it by ourselves, which is why I was so happy that Torrin asked that we have the opportunity to share this with you, because this is something that is available to you now and hopefully can help guide. And again, one of the things we want information on is some of this data that we have access to isn't as new as we would like. And we're trying to track some of that information down. So if you have access to better data, to let us know. And if you have questions or if you have any concerns, I would love to hear those, because we really want this to be something of value. And, you know, it's, you know, our CEO, Arlen Orchard, this was his brainchild in terms of sustainable communities and looking at sustainability from a holistic standpoint. And so I've been really happy to be a part of delivering something that I think will add some value to the conversation that you're having here as a part of this group, but a conversation that needs to be had in every community. So that's the presentation thus far. If there's some specific questions, the last thing I will add is you can also just type in a specific address and get some very specific information as to what's happening in your neighborhood. I just did this for a friend earlier. Let's just go see how Florence High School is. Right there, high school. And type that in, and it's gonna give me information specific to Florence High School. And again, we still have the tree canopy layer identified. You can see not necessarily what we would be looking for from a Tree Foundation perspective. Maybe there's an opportunity there. And then being able to turn the layers on and off, identify what are some of the indicators that are triggering this free and reduced lunch level of over 80%. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, thanks so much for the time.
Wow, thank you so much, Jose. That is amazing and powerful tool. if anyone has any questions for Jose about this, can type them in the chat box, and I can facilitate that. I know, Jose, you said you gotta jump off the call here in about 5 minutes or so. But yeah, I think maybe if we have one or two questions.
Is there anybody who doesn't know how to use the chat box? Just check it. Because you can also unmute yourself and ask if you have a question.
Absolutely. All right, Jose. So Steve Swiger is asking, have you had any conversations with funders or agencies that would support projects like tree planting and greening in these target areas?
Is my mic, am I muted right now?
No, we can hear you.
Great. Awesome. Yes, we have. And I guess the first step is we've actually started talking internally. And actually Torrin and Ray and I started having a conversation, and one of our partners internally is very interested in looking at ways in which we can start doing plantings at some multifamily complexes that are in currently underserved and low-income populations. And so we're looking at trying to launch a very small pilot to get that process going. We also have started sharing this with some corporate sponsors, and there's definitely an interest level. I think COVID-19 has definitely pulled back some of the early anticipation, but there's definitely a desire for folks to get involved, not just in the tree planting, but in terms of identifying additional resource needs which they can target and be more focused. And I can say that we've been working with the major medical organizations in our region at, again, how they can leverage this as a part of their overall vision and mission. Haven't had the specific tree planting conversation with them, but it's definitely one that we could discuss based on the health equity connection of it all.
Awesome. I've got a couple more questions. So what are the next steps for the Sustainable Community Program?
Great question. I think the big thing for the overall Sustainable Communities Program, particularly with the post-COVID-19 scenario, we have a number of partners on the nonprofit space that we've been working with, and to be really transparent, their needs are different now. A lot of the needs are how do you keep the doors open so they can continue to serve some of the populations that need to be served. So one of the first things we're doing right now is trying to realign some of our support, particularly to help in technology advancement, so that folks can leverage the technology we have here to reach students, to reach some of our more underserved populations, to reach our seniors and what have you. So we're trying to leverage those partnerships. I think the other piece that we're really looking at is trying to incorporate a workforce development component to what we're doing to ensure that there's some pathways and pipelines to workforce opportunities. And one of the major areas that we've actually been trying to draw folks is in the landscaping and arborist tree environmental landscaping space. We're actually working with a major for-profit organization that has an interest in potentially teaming with us to improve that pipeline. So that's something that's more aspirational. We don't have an MOU with them yet, but we definitely are looking in that direction. But really what we're trying to do is leverage those partnerships, and what we're trying to also do by the end of this year is identify some metrics to share with the public as to how we track our areas of improvement in our 6 categories. So everything from education to health to healthy environment to institutional improvements to mobility. Hopefully that answers the question. I apologize if it was a little more big.
Yeah. No, that's great. Do you have time for one more question? Yeah. I know. Okay.
No problem.
So.
And if you can send me these, I can actually
absolutely.
Get back to you as well. And I apologize. It's just I have another live broadcast. I can't.
Oh no, that's okay. You know what? There are a number of great questions on here. So I don't know if would you be comfortable with us sharing your contact information
Oh,
with this group
completely.
in a follow-up email? Okay.
Completely.
Rachel, skip mine. Let somebody else's go. I can always reach out to Jose.
Cool. All right. I guess one question that kind of captures a couple of these is, how are you sharing this with the different communities? Are you doing any specific outreach to any community partners that are identified, such as like the schools? And what's the long range plan in terms of like planning those things? You know, is there an element for the community to get involved in that, spreading the word about this tool? What's the kind of situation with that?
Great question. Yesterday, we have 102 sustainable communities partners that are majority local nonprofits that are spread throughout the entire region. In fact, I can share those partners with you guys after the call, so you know who those pilot partners are with. We had a summit with them yesterday. We've shared that with all of those partners and are asking them to reach out to their constituents, and we're offering ourselves up. My entire team is happy to come to you and do exactly what I'm doing and walk folks through the process. The other thing that we are trying to do is actually, and this is where COVID is rough, we have a road show plan to be able to go out to some of our neighborhood partners, whether it be the Urban League, whether it be La Familia, and reach out and actually work with some of those partners. We have a strong relationship with Mutual Housing and all 16 of their complexes. And the idea is to leverage those existing relationships to get the word out. But what I'd love for everyone here to do is, again, I can send this link to everyone. You have access to it. Share it with your network. We have some media that's gone out, and then we're going to hopefully continue to do more summits as we graduate and understand the technology to be able to find ways to get folks connected. I can probably do one more question too, because I know that the wait can be long. I guess the last question as it relates to schools too, we do have our schools liaison, Jacob Katz, who is reaching out to our schools to share this as well.
So I guess the next question on here is, for the air quality monitoring part of the sustainability, is air quality monitoring part of the sustainable community program?
So we aren't doing air quality monitoring, and this goes back to leveraging people's strengths. We're working very closely with the Air District, and if I was to go back to the map, we've incorporated the Air District air quality layers that they've been evaluating for AB 617. And so we've been leveraging the air monitoring that's been happening as a part of that process. And their focus right now primarily in South Sacramento. But they've identified 10 locations throughout the area that have a need for additional air quality monitoring and modifications. So the plan is to go from each of those areas and do further evaluations. What SMUD's doing is leveraging some of this information to get additional grant dollars for that and provide a bigger justification as to why there's a larger need. So we work really closely with Alberto and his team as a part of that process.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much Jose for coming and presenting to us. This is just such a powerful tool and such a great resource for all of us to be able to get a better look at what's going on in our communities. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. And again, if there's a need to get more face-to-face, I'm more than happy to come back. This is a great crew, and whenever you guys get face-to-face in real life, I'd love to come and just listen, because I really appreciate what you guys do.
Absolutely.